Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vijnana Goswami Prabhupada Ki. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. Purport. The Lord has described various kinds of knowledge and processes of religion. Knowledge of the Supreme Brahman, knowledge of the Super-Soul, knowledge of the different types of orders and statuses of social life, knowledge of the renounced order of life, knowledge of non-attachment, sense and mind control, meditation, etc. He has described in so many ways different types of religion. Now, in summarizing Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that Arjuna should give up all the processes that have been explained to him. He should simply surrender to Krishna. That surrender will save him from all kinds of sinful reactions, for the Lord personally promises to protect him. In the 7th chapter, it is said that only one who has become free from all sinful reactions can take to the worship of Lord Krishna. Thus one may think that unless he is free from all sinful reactions, he cannot take to the surrendering process. To such doubts, it is here said that even if one is not free from all sinful reactions, simply by the process of surrendering to Sri Krishna, he is automatically freed. There is no need of strenuous effort to free oneself from sinful reactions. One should unhesitatingly accept Krishna as the supreme savior of all living entities. With faith and love, one should surrender unto him. The process of surrender to Krishna is described in the Hari Bhakti Vilas. Anukulyasya sankalpah pratikulyasya varjanam rakshishyatiti vishvaso goptritve varanam tatha atmanikshepa karpanye sadvidha sharanagati. According to the devotional process, one should simply accept such religious principles that will lead ultimately to the devotional service of the Lord. One may perform a particular occupational duty according to his position in the social order, but if by executing his duty one does not come to the point of Krishna consciousness, all his activities are in vain. Anything that does not lead to the perfectional stage of Krishna consciousness should be avoided. One should be confident that in all circumstances Krishna will protect him from all difficulties. There is no need of thinking how one should keep the body and soul together. Krishna will see to that. One should always think himself helpless and should consider Krishna the only basis for his progress in life. As soon as one seriously engages himself in devotional service of the Lord in full Krishna consciousness, at once he becomes freed from all contamination of material nature. There are different processes of religion and purificatory processes by cultivation of knowledge, meditation, in the mystic yoga system, etc. But one who surrenders unto Krishna does not have to execute so many methods. That simple surrender unto Krishna will save him from unnecessarily wasting time. One can thus make all progress at once and be freed from all sinful reactions. One should be attracted to the beautiful vision of Krishna. His name is Krishna because he is all attractive. One who becomes attracted by the beautiful, all-powerful, omnipotent vision of Krishna is fortunate. There are different kinds of transcendentalists. Some of them are attached to the impersonal Brahman vision. Some of them are attracted to the super-soul feature, etc. But one who is attracted to the personal feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead And above all, one who is attracted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Krishna himself is the most perfect transcendentalist. In other words, devotional service to Krishna in full consciousness is the most confidential part of knowledge. And this is the essence of the whole Bhagavad Gita. Karma yogis, empiric philosophers, mystics, and devotees are all called transcendentalists, but one who is a pure devotee is the best of all. The particular words used here, ma shuchaha, do not fear, don't hesitate, don't worry, are very significant. One may be perplexed as to how one can give up all kinds of religious forms and simply surrender unto Krishna, but such worry is useless. Srila Prabhupada ki Sarva dharvan parityajya mamekam sharanam vrajaham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshashyami ma shuchaham. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Ajanulambita Bhujau Kanakavadatu Sankirtanai Kapitaro Kamalaya Taksha Vishwambaro Dvijavaro Yugadharma Palo Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karunavataram Yantah Pravishya Mama Vachimamam Prasuptam Sanjeevayate Kila Shakti Daraksvadamna Anyamscha Hasta Charana Shravanat Vagadim Pranannamo Bhagavate Purushaya Tubhyam. Hare Krishna. I was wondering why Shruti Dharma Prabhu asked me to speak on this topic. I guess he feels that we have a special experience in Russia of surrendering to the inconceivable mercy of the Lord. And sometimes it seems so, but ultimately this process of surrender is the universal process, and the better we understand what it means, what it implies, the better it is for us. Srila Jiva Goswami, and I mostly base my presentation on his section in Bhakti Sandarbha where he explains what surrender means, emphatically says that surrender can immediately bring you all the perfections in life. He says in this section of Bhakti Sandarbha that you don't need to do anything else but surrender. All the siddhis, all the perfections, including the main perfection which all the people in this material world are looking for, the perfections of being saved from the miseries of this life, are included into this process of surrender. And as such, this is the most powerful process, the most powerful tool. We have to know exactly how to use this tool to achieve everything we need. At the same time, Srila Jiva Goswami also says that if you don't surrender 100%, and who does? He says, then you will get the perfection, but according to the degree of your surrender. So surrender is the deciding factor in our achieving the results of devotional service. Sometimes we wonder, we are performing sadhana bhakti and devotional service for so long, but somehow or other the promised results are not coming. So the key to understand this is this statement by Srila Jiva Goswami, where he says that you can only get the results of your practices to the extent of your surrender. To the extent of this inner bhava of surrender. The results can be very quick. They don't depend on time. They don't depend on the, even amount of our practices. They basically depend on this very intimate and internal state of our consciousness in which we perform all devotional activities. Devotional activities, no matter how devotional they are, no matter how they are, externally devotional, how they are related with Krishna, can be in vain. As Prabhupada says, any process which does not ultimately bring you to this surrender, which he equates in the purport with Krishna consciousness, will be in vain, will be basically waste of time. So that's why this particular topic is important. And also Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his introductory song to Saranagati, to this beautiful book of songs, he says that Lord Chaitanya will hear the prayers which are imbibed with surrender. And he will not hear otherwise. The prayers which are not penetrated with the spirit of surrender, the prayers which are not connected with this complete spirit of self-abnegation and self-surrender, will not be heard by Lord Chaitanya. Srila Jiva Goswami in his Bhakti Sandarbha again says that sometimes one prays to the Lord. But he says if the prayers are vyalika. Vyalika means cheating. If there is no sincerity in these prayers, then he says that it will not be heard by the Lord as much as the clouds of our cheating mentalities can kind of block us from the Lord. In the same way, when the rays of the sun are filtered through the clouds, they lose the power. They lose the potency. When you are directly, even in England, if you get, for a change, direct rays of sun, which is not blocked by the clouds, then you feel warm, It may be a little chilly, but the direct rays of the sun, they have this power. It's called in Sanskrit, tivra. They are, they can be biting. But, the same sun in the same England, when it's blocked, then the same sun loses its power. The power is dissipated. In the same way, the prayer may be very powerful. It can reach directly to the Lord and it can bring miraculous effects in our lives. But when it's blocked by our lack of surrender, which is compared with the clouds, then it loses its power. it loses its power to attract the attention of the Lord. Therefore, better we understand what surrender implies and what it means. And of course, it's not a question of intellectual understanding, but intellectual understanding may help to a certain extent to get the clear picture of what it means by surrender. So I wanted to start this little presentation with two stories. Two beautiful stories. One story I recently told to Shruti Dharma Prabhu is a story of Parasharbhata. This is a story of Parasharbhata was the successor of Ramanujacharya, and he was the son of Kuresh. And of course Kuresh is the glorious example of complete surrender. Ramanujacharya had a very intimate relationship with Parasharbhata. And the story goes like this, that once Parasharbhata was going through the forest. And he had a few associates with him. And he met a hunter, a completely rude and brutal person, hunter, who was killing animals. And this hunter was in somewhat perplexed state of mind. He was somewhat agitated and he started seeing a sadhu. He started pouring out what was there in his heart. Something really shocked him. He said, "What happened with me today? I caught a rabbit in my trap. And I was very happy because the rabbits are my food. And I wanted to kill this rabbit. And this rabbit, when I let him little loose, he was still something, This rabbit started circling around my feet, circling and circling and circling. And ultimately, he came very close to the feet and put his head on my feet and completely surrendered. And in this moment, my heart melted. And I thought, I can't kill this rabbit. I have to let him free. And I let him free, and I can't figure out why did I do this. He was totally shocked by this incident or his thing. And when Parasharbhat heard this story, he fainted. All the ecstatic symptoms appeared in his body, and, hair stood on end, tears came to his eyes, and he ultimately fainted. And when he came back to his senses, his associates asked him, "Why did you faint? What happened with you when you heard this stupid story?" Simple story. And Parasharbhata said, this rabbit never read Bhagavad Gita. He didn't study scriptures. And still, out of natural instinct, he surrendered. And this stupid, cruel hunter, he never promised that he would deliver anyone who will surrender unto him. But still he did it out of natural instinct because he couldn't do otherwise. He just couldn't do it. And he said, how fortunate we are. We read Bhagavad Gita where Krishna directly says and promises this. Where Krishna says that Kaunteya pratijani name bhakta pranasyati. You just declare it boldly that if somebody is surrendered unto me, if somebody has become my bhakta, he will never be, he will never perish in this world. And here he says in this verse, famous verse of Bhagavad Gita, if somebody surrenders unto me, I will protect him. And he says, how fortunate we are, we know about this. And we are human beings, so we have developed brain by which we can surrender. And he said, and how unfortunate we are. Because despite of knowing this, we still don't surrender. We still don't have the trust and belief that we don't do enough, to show the Lord that we are completely surrendered unto Him. So this is a very beautiful story which proves that this process of surrender is very natural. It's ultimately a very natural process for those who feel one's dependence on the Lord. If this feeling of dependence on the Lord is there, then the process of surrender, like in the case of this rabbit, this rabbit, somehow or other he felt this is the best way to do in this difficult situation, just to surrender unto the feet of this hunter. And of course, the next story which shows the power of this surrender, of the process of surrendering, and how surrender ultimately brings about the mercy of the Lord, is again the story of an animal, of the dog of Shivananda Sen. We all know the story described in the Antya Lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita, when the dog, just street dog, completely homeless dog, saw the devotees who went to Puri, the group of devotees on yatra, walking from Navadvip to Puri, and Shivananda Sen was in charge. And it's usual for the dogs. Dogs are actually quite intelligent people, much more intelligent than the rest of the people. So they're looking for somebody, for a master. There is one advantage of being a dog. You don't have too much pride. Especially street dogs, especially in India, they're quite humble creatures. Of course, dogs in the West are different. They're quite proud. That's the difference between India and the West. When they walk, you can feel a big ego. So, this is again very natural. The dogs, they looking for a master, and this dog went together with this devotees and Shivananda Sen. And Shivananda Sen, when he saw that this dog is completely, totally surrendered, in the sense that he follows all the rules, he follows them, he just doesn't want to leave them, his heart melted. Again, in a very natural way, in a very spontaneous way. If somebody takes shelter of you, if somebody just follows you, you kind of feel like, like protecting him. I remember, some time ago I was in Vrindavan, and every day I used to go around Vrindavan to do the parikram. And in the same way, there was a special dog living in Krishna Balaram Mandir, who would, whoever would go around Vrindavan, he would go with him. And this dog was, probably he was Prabhupada's disciple, and I don't know. But at least he was there all the time at the entrance of Krishna Balaram Mandir, and when he would see somebody and he heading towards the Parikram road, he would follow him very diligently. And this dog, it's amazing also. Every day he would do it. With everyone, No matter how many times he would circumambulate Vrindavan. Shri Radha Gokulananda ki jai. Shri Sitaram Lakshmana Hanuman ki jai. Gornita ki jai. He would go with them, and in certain sections of Vrindavan, and there were some other dogs who were very possessive, this is our place. And they would start, biting this dog and, barking at him. But he was he was still following, I had to circumambulate Vrindavan. And it was very touching to the heart. When you see that somebody is just, no matter what, whatever impediments are there, whatever difficulties are there, if somebody is still following and following you, you feel like protecting him, So the first day we went there, and this other dogs attacked this dog. So next time when I went around Vrindavan, I took a stick to protect my dog from these other dogs. Because again, it's a very natural and spontaneous kind of thing, which you feel like doing, if you feel that somebody is surrendering. And in the same way, Shivananda Sen, in this particular story of Chaitanya Charitamrita, he felt very protective of this dog. He would cook a special vegetarian prasadam for this dog and would take care of him. And we know what happened because of this mercy of Shivananda Sen to this poor creature. He got the mercy of the Lord. So this is basically, there are two ways of surrender which are there. You can surrender directly to the Lord. Because Krishna himself says that surrender unto me. And Prabhupada explains the connection of this. We'll go a little further. This is one way of surrendering to the Lord. You surrender directly unto Him. He demands it, He wants it, and we know this is to the best of our interest, and somehow or other we do it. And it may be difficult because we don't have the direct connection, or we don't feel the direct connection with the Lord. So the other way of surrendering unto the Lord is to surrender to a devotee. And if you surrender to somebody who is surrendered, if you surrender to a devotee of the Lord completely, then the effect is absolutely the same. For Lord, there is no difference. Like in this story, because this dog was surrendered to Shivananda Sen, all the devotees saw this amazing scene when Lord Chaitanya would give the pulp of the coconut, raw coconut, to this dog. And by eating his Mahaprasadam, he was giving to the dog. And the dog was, and not only this, Lord Chaitanya directly told this dog, was saying to this dog, you chant Hari, Krishna, Govinda, chant. And the dog was very intelligent. The dog, it's amazing how intelligent the dog was due to the association with the devotees. Lord Chaitanya would tell them, chant Hari, Krishna, Govinda, and the dog would only chant Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. He knew the Siddhanta, he knew the Tattva. Again, you can, and this is, the amazing display of the mercy of the Lord. Because normally dogs don't say Krishna. Their tongue is not really, made to do some audible sound. They can only say, but the dog was saying, Krishna, 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 Krishna. And that basically means mercy. The holy name, it is said, Svayam eva spuratyadaha. When this inclination to serve comes, then the holy name comes to our tongue on its own accord. So basically this is the illustration how the mercy, the visible mercy of the Lord came upon the dog. And the dog became a devotee. He was chanting 16 rounds of Hare Krishna mantra and eating only Mahaprasadam. And the next day he disappeared. He was And everyone knew where he has gone, that he is there with the Lord. By this process of surrender. And that's again the illustration of this point. When the surrender is complete, when there is a complete surrender, you reach all the perfection. The perfect destination and the perfect result is there with you, and there is no doubt about it. So let's try to go a little deeper into this dimension of surrender. What does it mean complete surrender, and what does it mean non-complete surrender? If we look at Bhagavad Gita, and basically this message of surrender, Prabhupada says that this is the essence of Bhagavad Gita. That the essential message of Bhagavad Gita, he says this in this purport, the essential message of Bhagavad Gita is just abandon everything else and surrender to Krishna. And don't worry. Srila Prabhupada says that if you worry how you can abandon everything, this is useless. That's the end of his purport. He says, if you still have some worry, it means that something is wrong with you. And we will hear how Jiva Goswami analyzes this surrender, but let's first talk about Bhagavad Gita. We can see that this surrender is the beginning of Bhagavad Gita and the end of Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita only starts when Arjuna surrenders himself completely. That's one of the verses which you can legitimately say that this is the beginning, the start of Bhagavad Gita is this verse of Karpanya dosha pahata svabhava prichami tvam dharma samutacheta. When Arjuna says, enough is enough. I'm completely bewildered. I'm completely perplexed. I don't know what is good for me, what is not good for me, and therefore, Shishyasteham sadhimam tvam prapannam, I'm prapanna. I'm completely surrendered unto you. Just tell me what to do. Tell me in very definite terms what am I supposed to do. And this is the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, the beginning of surrender process. But we can see very clearly in this particular example, even though Arjuna says in the beginning, I'm surrendered soul, tell me what to do. In the very next verse he says, not the next verse, after a couple of verses he says, Nayotsya iti Govinda. I'm surrendered soul, tell me what to do, but I'm not going to fight. That's a very, very typical. That's quite a typical beginning of surrender. We surrender, but we surrender only up to this extent. I will do this and I will do this, but this I will never do. Please don't ask me for this. I am not surrendered to that extent. So, in one sense, it's a very encouraging news for us. Because we have to start somewhere, and even if we start in this kind of, artificial or not artificial, but even if we start with just saying that I surrender, it's something. The Lord takes it seriously and He starts working on us. It's a good beginning. If you tell the Lord that you are surrendered, even though He knows perfectly well that the reality of your heart is different, that you are not completely surrendered, He still takes it seriously and He starts He takes you through to make sure that the process of surrender is complete. He will take care of this surrendering process because He basically is caring about you. So this is the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, and we know that at the very end of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna repeats basically the same message. He says, Sarva dharman parityajam mamekam sharanam vraja. And this is what he wants to say, because there is no question of bhakti without surrender. And Srila Jiva Goswami starts this explaining Saranagati, what Saranagati means. He starts, he actually says that the surrender is the foundation. That the bhakti starts from surrender. And if you're not surrendered, even to a certain extent, there is no question of bhakti. Because bhakti implies service. The very word bhakti comes from the verbal root bhaj, which means the active service. This is service. And Srila Jiva Goswami explains, when he starts explaining the different sadhanas which one should do in bhakti, he first explains that bhakti, in reality bhakti, means nirgun bhakti. First we have to understand why surrender is the foundation. Why we cannot do anything in bhakti unless there is at least certain extent of surrender. And Srila Jiva Goswami explains in the previous sections of Bhakti Sandarbha that bhakti only becomes bhakti when it's not motivated, when it's nirgun. The sagun bhakti, or bhakti in the mode of tamas, in the mode of rajas, or in the mode of sattva, is not really bhakti. There is no service there because you want something. If you perform so-called devotional service and it's connected with the motivations belonging or pertaining to different modes of material nature, tamagun, rajagun, or sattvagun. And this is explained by Lord Kapila in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Then basically you're not serving. It's not the service. It has nothing to do with the service. You may call it service, but it's really not the service. And Prahlad Maharaj is very apt in saying that, if you want to give me some reward for my service, you basically don't consider me as a servant. Because the very notion, the very concept of reward means that this is not the service. I'm doing it and this is the payment. It's the salary. It's not the service. Service means I'm doing it without any expectation. And Srila Jiva Goswami explains this before explaining Saranagati, and this is a very important thing to understand, why bhakti can only start with Saranagati, because without Saranagati there cannot be any service without any expectation of reward. We can serve, there is quote-unquote serve here, expecting some reward, but this is not service. It's just, I'm just more or less selling myself. Here I am. I can serve you if you want, if you need my service. Here it is. But I need this and this and this from you. So this is a business deal. And the business deal is a separate kind of, transaction. If you want to enter into this transaction with the Lord, that's fine. But please don't call it bhakti. Bhakti only starts when you come to the Lord and you more or less come to the Lord with this understanding that I I'm your servant by definition, by nature. The service to you is something which I cannot avoid doing. This is my nature, and from this point, basically, real bhakti starts. So, Krishna gives so much stress to surrender, and the whole Bhagavad Gita is this because ultimately he wants to give us the essential message of all the scriptures. Prabhupada explains here that ultimately all the scriptures, all the Vedas with all different things, they culminate in this understanding that I am the servant of God. If there is no this culmination, if this culmination by any chance is not there, this is again waste of time. So, and therefore we have to really clearly understand that this, the surrender is the message of Bhagavad Gita from beginning to end. And the surrender is the preliminary condition for us to be engaged in devotional service without any expectations. That ultimately the natural conclusion of surrender is that, okay, I surrender. Ultimately, when we translate das as a servant, it's not a very accurate translation. Because in reality, dasa means slave. So when we get, our initiation ceremony, we take a very honorable title. Now I am a slave. In the Western kind of culture, it's the most horrible thing which may happen to you. You become a slave. But that's exactly what surrender means. I relinquish my independence, my independent ego. I don't belong to myself. And basically, devotional service is a slavery. It's not the service. Not the service in the modern understanding of this word. Because who is slave? Slave is somebody who doesn't expect any particular reward. Right? The master can give him something. He may not give anything to him. He may give him some clothes. He may not give any clothes. He's the slave. He doesn't have any independence. So the slaves, they work not because they get something. They work because this is their relationship. Because this is their position. The difference between the material slavery and spiritual slavery is that spiritual slavery or devotional service is completely volunteer. It's my conscious act of surrendering my independence. But the nature is the same. Basically, nature is that I'm not independent anymore, and it means that there is no reward. I'm not expecting any reward. And the most degraded situation which is there in the material world of a slave, to be the slave in the material world, is the most despicable condition of life. Becomes the most glorious position in the spiritual world. According to the law of reflection, if somebody is reflected, if something is reflected, then the highest point in the object becomes the lowest point in the reflection. So according to the law of reflection, something which is the highest position in the spiritual world, complete total surrender. And this total surrender is basically manifest by the inhabitants of Vrindavan. Their degree of surrender is unbelievable, but we will come to this. In the material world, it becomes the lowest point, the point of complete, total, degradation of the humanity. But we have to understand that ultimately that's what it is. We are voluntarily relinquishing our free will and surrendering to the Lord, understanding that this is what we are supposed to do, that this is nature, this is our nature. And therefore, Srila Jiva Goswami starts explaining this process of Saranagati by saying that there can be two causes of surrender. Basically, there could be theoretically two motivations or two causes of surrender. One is fear. One is this understanding that I'm totally, completely lost in this world. I'm perplexed, like Arjuna says. Karpanya dosha pahata svabhava prichhami tvam dharma samudacheda. I don't know what to do. The difficulties of life are too much for me. And the first motivation is that I'm fed up. I'm sick and tired. I'm completely, totally, it's enough is enough for me. This karma is too much, and krodha is too much, and all these things. I'm trying to do something in this material world, but I cannot do anything because I'm always how you say this? I'm always overwhelmed by all these problems. This prayer of surrender, which shows this is impetus to surrender, is there in Chaitanya Charitamrita also. It's from Padyavali of Srila Rupa Goswami. Kamadina katina katida palita durnidesham tesham jatamaina karuna natrapana pashanti hutsrijaitam madha yadupate sampramtam labdha buddhis tvam mayatah sharanam abhayam mamni yukshvat madasye. So this is the illustration which shows, this verse shows this impetus to surrender. The devotee says in this pitiable, in this verse, which, he explains his pitiable condition. Kamadina katina katida palita durni desham tesham jatamaina karuna natrapana pashanti. I have been a slave of my lust. And not only lust, of my anger, of my greed, of my illusion, of my pride, of my envy. I have been enslaved by these tendencies. And I've been trying to satisfy my masters. We have all these masters, The Kama is our master, and we are his obedient servant. Dasoham, I'm your servant. And anger and the greed and all these things, we're trying. And he says that despite of all my attempts to serve these masters, they're neither satisfied nor become little more moderate in their demands. Not rapid. They are shameless, these masters. I surrender to them. I'm doing something for them. I'm trying to fulfill the desires of these cruel masters which are there in this material world, pushing me around. But they become more and more shameless. And they're pushing me to do more and more abominable things in this world. This is the condition which ultimately brings us one to this level, or to this extent of surrender. Kamadina katina katida palita durni desham tesham jatamaina karuna natrapana pashanti utsrijaitam adha Yadupate mam utvrđajte madha Yadupate labdha buddhis. But now, Atha, when I got little sense, when I get little buddhi, little intelligence, when the intelligence somehow or other dawned on me, came to me after so long, I understand that I have to give it up and take somebody else as my master. Not these forces which are pushing me around and having no mercy on me. I have to take Yadupati, the Lord of the Yadus, as my master. And Tvam Ayatah Sharanam Abhayam Mamni Yukshvat Madasye. Oh, my Lord, give me the shelter which will make me completely fearless. I'm your servant now. I'm your conscious servant, and please give me your shelter, which will bring about fearlessness of in my life. And this is according to Srila Jiva Goswami, first and the most common reason. When once through the experience of the miseries of life, which are connected with our independent will, independent desire, or desire to realize our independence in this world, bring countless problems in our life, countless perplexities, and bring about the complete mess in our life. So one can surrender because of this, getting some intelligence through the school of hard knocks. And Srila Jiva Goswami says that there is another way of surrendering oneself to the Lord, when one is intelligent enough from the very beginning. And it's a rare case. In Kali Yuga, it's non-existent. But he says, theoretically, it's possible that a person, without going through this painful and very miserable experience in life, surrenders unto the Lord with the first, when there are some problems are there, little problems are there, or even no problems are there, but he understands that I still have a problem. And my problem is aversion to the Lord. Because I turned away myself from the Lord, because I'm not with the Lord in heart. I'm not unified with Him in my will. My will is independent, and I'm maintaining my independence by this intelligent understanding that this is what I should do. One can surrender to the Lord without going through this painful and miserable experience of fear and all the problems in life. So this is the first explanation which Srila Jiva Goswami gives. And then he explains, as usually, that again there are two, by taking from here, he explains that again there could be two ways of surrender. This realization that we have to come to the Lord for shelter. Ananyagati. Understanding that He is the only one who can solve all my problems. He is the only one by whom I can get the complete relief from all the problems of life. Again, can come in two different ways to one's life. He says the first way, it's the first way of getting this understanding that it's only the Lord is when you are chased or overwhelmed by the fear of material existence, and this fear is your impetus to surrender to the Lord. It's a very important point for us to understand that in this world everyone is completely overwhelmed by the fear of death. Patanjali Muni in his Yoga Sutra says that the fear of death, it's interesting, he explains the 5 kleshas, pancha kleshas, or 5 causes of suffering in this world. And he gives the definition of each klesha, starting with ignorance, avidya. The first klesha is avidya, and then the second klesha is asmita, or misidentification with the body, false ego, and then raga and dvesha. And he gives the definition. When it comes to the 5th klesha, which is abhinivesh, and abhinivesh basically means the fear of death. He doesn't give any definition because there's nothing to define. And he says, instead of giving the definition of this abhinivesh, of this mental or emotional state, which is the underground, not an underground, the background of our existence, instead of defining it, he just says that everyone is a prey of this, everyone is a victim of this, including the most wise people. Even the Munis are afraid of death. So, therefore, Srila Jiva Goswami says that the first, the first understanding or first way of surrender is that you are overwhelmed with this fear, and you are not afraid of admitting that you are fearful. Usually people, they don't understand how deep this fear of material existence is within our heart. Sometimes even people say, oh, I am not afraid of death. I'm afraid of snakes, I'm afraid of spiders, I'm afraid of my wife, but I'm not afraid of death. No problem, I'm totally fearless. But this statement is only the manifestation of their fear to see how fearful they are. They're too much afraid to admit themselves how afraid they are. Because this fear of death is all pervading, and that's why Patanjali Muni says that, this fear of death is the first way to understand that there is somebody who can save me from this fear of death, and that's God. There's only one who can save me from this fear of death, that's God. Only Him He is there to give me this complete freedom of this fear, of this emotional instability which is there. And of course, Srimad Bhagavatam explains that the cause of this fear is Bhayam Dvitiya Binivesha Taksyati Shadapeta Viparyayos Pritik, that this cause of fear is this Dvitiya Binivesha, when we become completely absorbed in this something secondary in the body. When our memory becomes distorted, viparyaya asmritih, when we lose the memory and our consciousness becomes distorted, when we turn away from the Lord. The moment we turn away from the Lord, the moment we forget about the Lord and start being concerned with the body, with our material existence, the fear comes. And therefore, this fear is the way, it's there. Ultimately, the desire to get rid of this fear is the way to surrender to the Lord. And Srila Jiva Goswami, he quotes the following verse from the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, which explains this process of surrender. This is the verse which Devaki, this is the prayer of Devaki, Mother Devaki, towards Krishna, who appeared in the prison of Kamsa. Again, perfect setting. You know, we are there in the prison. And completely anything can happen with us any time. We are not in control. We try to find some other ways, but ultimately, if we are intelligent enough, we get this understanding that the only one who can protect us from death is Krishna. And Devaki Mata, she says, Martyo mrityu vyala bhitah palayan. She says that the martyaha, the living entities who are destined to die, you know, the death rate in this world is 100%. It's not 80%, not 90%, it's 100%. You know, because we're all martya, we are all mortal. And she says that this martya, these mortal living entities who are, you know, you can protect yourself from disease, you can try to protect yourself from, you know, old age, from the wrinkles, you know, you can try to find so many means to protect yourself from different things. But there is one thing, there is no protection, it's death. Death, you know, there is only one way to protect oneself from death, and therefore she says, Martyo mrityu vyala bitach, mrityu vyala. She says that this death is like snake. Sometimes the time is compared with the snake of time. And she says that all this martya, the mortal people who are bhita, they're afraid or fearful of this mrityu vyala. They're palayan. Palayan means they're running away. Everyone being, being chased by this fear of death is running, trying to run from the snake. And the snake is running behind us. And guess what? Sooner or later, it will catch us. No doubt about it. And she says, Lokan sarvan nirbhayam nadhyagachat. It says that in different, planets, people do this, but ultimately in different planets, because they want this nirbhayam, this state of complete freedom of fear, they're trying to take shelter of your lotus feet. Tvat padabjan prapya yadrichhadya. O Adya, O you who are the original Lord, the beginning of everything, the source of everything, the cause of everything, the cause of all causes. If the people take shelter of your lotus feet, somehow or other take shelter of your lotus feet, then they become completely peaceful inside. Shishtaksete mrityu rasmat apaiti. And the mrityu flees away. The translation of this, no one in this material world has become free from the four principles of birth, death, old age, and disease, even by fleeing to various planets. But now that you have appeared, my Lord, death is fleeing in fear of you, and the living entities, having obtained shelter of your lotus feet by your mercy, are sleeping in full mental peace. Basically, Srila Jiva Goswami, and that's the last thing which I will say, he says that the first thing is that complete realization of that there is something wrong in our life by the very fact that we will have to die. There is no need of any other problems in life. We have enough problem of death. And that's, if we realize this very deeply, that's enough for us to try to take shelter of the Lord, because He is the only solution for this problem. For other problems of life, there may be some other solutions. But this problem has only one solution. That's to take, unquestionably take shelter of the Lord. I don't want to die. And I don't want, and that means that I have to take shelter of you and stop taking shelter of my body, of my intelligence, of my wealth, of my so many different things. Because this is all false. When we understand this, Prabhupada once gave a very amazing definition of humility. Harivilas Prabhu asked him, can you give the definition of humility? What is humility? What does humility mean? So basically, what does surrender means? What does it mean? And Prabhupada says, humility means just one thing. If you completely, without any trace of doubt, know that nothing in this world, including your money, your wife, your intelligence, your education, your gun, whatever, your job saves you. If you understand that nothing in this world saves you, then basically means that you surrendered. You're humble. This understanding itself constitutes the surrender and humility, and therefore, first Srila Jiva Goswami says that the one way of surrendering is to understand that we already have the problem, and this main problem is the fear of death. And he says that there is a second way of surrendering, is that, this definition which Srila Prabhupada gave in the forest of Boulogne in France, it's more appropriate to the second way, which Srila Jiva Goswami explains. He says that the second way of surrender is that you try to depend on something else. And that's exactly what Krishna is saying here in this particular verse. Because in this world we are trying to take shelter of different things. Of different processes of religion, of, different medicines, of our own intelligence, of different things we are trying to take shelter. And, Srila Jiva Goswami says that the second way of realizing that there is only one Ananyagati, that there is only one destination which we have to strive for and to come for, is the Lord, is that we try different things and we realize that different things ultimately don't work. That ultimately, when we, out of pride, try to protect ourselves by different means. Basically, the second process is like this. You think that you know what is best for me. Please, raise your hand who thinks that he knows what is best for me. We all think like this. I know better. Right? I know better what I'm supposed to do. I know better how to save myself. I know better. I can figure it out. I have everything in my control, right? And therefore, this understanding, which constitutes pride, this is the definition of pride. I know how to save myself. I know I'm smart enough, right? I'm intelligent. I had good marks in my school days, so I can figure it out. I know what to do. I know better. And Srila Jiva Goswami says that first one realizes the most important things, that there is no solution for the fear of death. Second, one is trying to solve some other problems by one's own means, without coming close to this powerful fear of death. And therefore tries to take shelter in different other things and means and ways of living life. But ultimately he realizes, no, there is no way. I have to surrender to God. I'm not intelligent enough to live this life. I may be intelligent enough to fool others, but not intelligent enough to solve all the problems of my life. There has to be the sincere impetus of surrendering to the Supreme Lord, and that's how Srila Jiva Goswami starts explaining this process of Saranagati or surrender. So I guess that's the end of today's class. Thank you very much. I think we still have a couple of minutes if somebody wants to ask a question.